My name is David Hyde-Harrison, and I'm 81 years old, and I don't think I've got very long to live. And I'm desperate, but somebody else should be talking about the subjects which I think are the most important in the world. Otherwise, no changes and no development will take place. I'd like to talk about inventions because nobody else is talking about them, and they're blocked by health and safety rules, and people don't realize how serious these health and safety rules are to the creation of new inventions. One of the obvious ones is driverless cars. Cars are prohibited if they're driverless, and therefore they cannot be invented. And I believe they would save 9/10 of the accidents on the roads if they were allowed. And therefore, health and safety regulations are guilty of blocking people's and killing people by not allowing new inventions to be made, which are often need to break the existing rules. For instance, houses must have foundations, and this is obviously obvious if the house is built of brick. But the main line has run from London to Edinburgh for 100 years with steam engines which are heavier than council houses, and yet nowhere are there foundations except when it goes over bridges. The ordinary railway track just does not have foundations, and therefore we could have houses without foundations, especially if they were built of lighter materials. And experiments ought to be done in these sort of fields, and they're delayed and not just nobody's doing anything. There are so many laws to prevent new buildings being built that they exceed the total volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and nobody in the street really realizes there are these rules. And I think that, for instance, it may be an outrageous idea, but an architect ought to be allowed to build his own house how he likes, away from any sort of regulation, providing he lives in it for 20 years. And maybe some of the houses would fall down or fail, but one or two of them might suddenly, people might wake up to realize that they were a tremendous advance, and all the houses of the future would tend to be like them. But all this is blocked by rules and regulations. And as I see it, this is the reason why, just at the moment, the whole world has gone into poverty and financial collapse. There was so much depends upon inventions, and inventions have been allowed to go ahead during periods of war, when like the atomic bomb was invented, and so on, and therefore electricity can be made from by atomic power. But this even is blocked. When I was young, people talked about when this happened. Maybe one wouldn't have to charge for electricity at all. It's so simple to make electricity from atomic power. And these are the sort of things that are just stopping inventions. Patents are, in a sense, an awfully good idea, but they are quite expensive, not so much to get your patent recorded as you have to go to an expert who can write your patent so that somebody else can't steal it from you. And they are incredibly expensive. And the ordinary person who lives in one room just can't afford that sort of thing to patent their ideas. And although there are more patents being taken out now than there ever were before, I believe that they are patents for simple operations whereby a car firm may have invented or already designed and printed the machinery which will make the back side of the motor car, and that then needs a shape that is unique for what the rear light will look like and the size of it. And they have to patent that in case somebody else should pretend that they had invented a light of just the same size, and therefore be able to hold them up in their production. And I don't believe that most of the patents that are being recorded now are really brilliant, brand new ideas which will make money for the future. And I do believe that it is terribly important that inventions are made, and is the only way in which the Western nations can get richer by, say, 5% per annum. And some of these wicked socialists and things, they like to spend 5% more money every year helping the poor, and the poor, incidentally, aren't actually poor. They're amongst the world's rich, because the poor live in Africa and India. And they then run up these huge debts in the hope that we're going to get 5% richer every year. But because inventions are not being arriving and getting through, I think we've ceased to get 5% richer, and that's where the governments run up terrifying debt, and in particular for old people who want pensions and things, because they're all living longer. They haven't got sufficient money to pay the pensions, so that we're getting into a real financial trouble. But if inventions could be made and invented freely, then there would be no problem, and we'd all be go back to being rich again. One of my ideas for improving it would be if anybody who made an invention could go and get a modest prize for having made it. And a lot of this money might be wasted because the thing that they'd invented wasn't really worth anything, but it would still encourage more people to think in terms of inventing things. And if they did that, we'd have an enormous flow of new inventions. And then if it really did take off and start making millions or billions of pounds, then maybe they could get a little bit of extra money. But I think many inventors would be more than willing to hand the invention over, and it can then be used immediately rather than being delayed by 20 years, if they thought that at least they were getting some sort of reward for it. And again, many of the inventors may be very skilled in a particular type of knowledge, but not know anything about another type of knowledge. And if they therefore produced their invention and it didn't sort of really work, somebody else who was a specialist in this other sort of knowledge would be able to suddenly make a really useful invention out of what had seemed to be pretty good nonsense. And I think that there would be a tremendous new attraction to people as a hobby making inventions and talking about them. And in this way, inventions could be encouraged. And then again, there's this book that's been written by Ray Kurzweil called The Singularity is Near, in which he thinks that within 35 years for $1,000, anyone will be able to become 1 billion times as intelligent. And nobody seems to be talking about this at all, but on a program on the TV talking about the future, they did highlight him. Only they didn't say that was what he said. They said some other little trivial thing that was of no interest at all. But I think he should be respected and considered. These are my thoughts, and I want to hear your thoughts, so please comment below.